There have only really been two Doctor Who movies, those being the Peter Cushing movies from the 60s, Doctor Who and the Daleks, and Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. Sure, there was the 90s TV movie and multiple non-BBC licensed spin-off movies, but besides the Peter Cushing movies, we've never really gotten Doctor Who on the big screen. But that's not for a lack of trying. In fact, there are oodles of examples of different people attempting to make Doctor Who movies that never worked out. I'll probably make a video about that soon, but I decided to make a separate video on this one for two reasons. One, it's pretty obscure, so I thought it would reach more people as its own thing rather than part of a compilation, and two, most importantly, this technically isn't a Doctor Who movie, but it is a movie adaptation of a Doctor Who story. Allow me to explain. Mervyn Haseman and Henry Lincoln were a writing duo in late 60s Doctor Who. For season 5, they wrote The Abominable Snowmen and The Web of Fear, creating the Yeti and the Great Intelligence in the process. They also wrote the season 6 opener, The Dominators, though if you were a viewer at the time, you probably wouldn't know that. Why? Well, if you watched Doctor Who at the time, you would have thought the script was written by Norman Ashby. Who's Norman Ashby? Well, no one. Norman Ashby is a pseudonym. Script editor Derek Sherwin rewrote Haseman and Lincoln's original script so heavily, including reducing the serial by an episode, to the point where Haseman and Lincoln thought it was so far removed that they asked not to be credited on screen. This created a rift between them and the BBC, and they wouldn't write for the show again. But in the early 70s, Haseman and Lincoln realized that they could adapt The Abominable Snowmen as a non-Doctor Who book. How? Well, the way things worked in the classic series was that if you were a writer and you created any characters that made their way into a show, whether that be a monster, a companion, a side character, etc., you would co-own the rights to that character with the BBC. So while the BBC could go ahead and use that character in the future Doctor Who stories without your permission, likewise, you could use that character in a non-BBC production without permission. And in The Abominable Snowmen, the only things fully owned by the BBC are the Doctor, Jamie, Victoria, and the TARDIS. So as long as they didn't include these elements, they could do whatever they wanted with the story. Haseman decided to write a novel adaptation simply titled The Yeti, though his wife Vina Haseman volunteered to write the book herself. The plot was essentially exactly the same, with some dialogue even lifted directly from the serial, with the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria being replaced with original characters Professor Murray and his sons John and Paul. However, no one bought the book. To this day, it remains unpublished. But this video isn't about a cancelled Doctor Who book, it's about a cancelled Doctor Who movie. So after the book was dead, Mervyn Haseman heard that Disney was looking for new material and rewrote the novel himself as a screenplay called The Intelligence. Interestingly, he decided to change the material further to feature Professor Challenger, a character from the Arthur Conan Doyle novel The Lost World, that later featured in his own novels The Poison Belt and The Land of Mist, as well as a couple short stories, as the replacement for the Doctor. This was apparently to bank on the success of a movie adaptation of The Lost World from 1960? Professor Challenger was given two children to replace Jamie and Victoria named John and Paula, pretty much identical to John and Paul from the book, but obviously Paul is now a girl. Apart from the first 15 minutes of the more than 2-hour-long movie, it was still pretty much just the Doctor Who serial with a couple things changed and removed. He showed it to Disney and apparently they were very impressed by it, but The Intelligence ultimately went unproduced due to Disney's financial troubles at the time. At one point, a few years later, Target approached Haseman and Lincoln about the rights to The Abominable Snowmen to adapt for a novel. Haseman talked to them about potentially reworking the Yeti to be faithful to the Doctor Who story, but Target insisted the novelization had to be written by one of their writers, so they instead just sold their blessing and Terrence Dicks wrote it instead. So there you have it, the story of the Doctor Who movie adaptation that wasn't. I hope you guys liked the video. Subscribe for daily Doctor Who, Power Rangers, Marvel, and DC videos, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.